Hey YouTube. About a year ago I decided to put a pergola in my backyard to give me some privacy while in my hot tub. Initially I did a bunch of research online and looked at buying options, but most were either super expensive or meant for a self-standing structure. I wanted my pergola attached to my house and cover my 10 by 12 patio. I decided to just build one myself and I think it came out great. So I thought I'd share how I did it. I think anybody who has basic woodworking skills should be able to accomplish something like this. If you enjoy this video or learn something, please leave a like to support the channel and subscribe for more content in the future. Alright, let's get into how I did it. I started out by just planning how I wanted it to look and did a quick drawing on paint. The front would have a door opening and then privacy slats on the right. And then on the right hand side of the pergola, I was going to put emerald green arborvitaes to give it some nice natural privacy. On the left hand side, I thought that I could attach a large pull down shade that I could kind of secure and attach on the sides to give me some privacy that way as well. I wanted it to be as long as my patio, so 12 feet, and then I had to decide if I wanted to use 6x6 or 4x4 posts. The 6x6 were diesel, big posts. With the amount of weight that I would be putting on it, I really didn't need those. So, and I was also using 3 in the front, 3 posts, and then attaching the back to the concrete. So, I had a pretty secure structure. Didn't really need the 6x6s, is what I decided. Now that I had my plan, I took a bunch of measurements and put together a list of materials I was going to need. First off was 2 2x6s that were 16 feet long. These would be the front and the back beams. Next are the 3 4x4 posts that are 12 feet long, 3 feet of those being in the ground, making the structure around 9 feet tall. Next is 18 1x4 10-foot boards for the privacy slats. Also needed 6 hex bolts with washer and nuts for attaching those front boards to the posts themselves. Needed 8 2x6 boards, those are the ones that are going all across the top, that were 12 feet long. And then 8 Simpson Strong-Tie joists that would support them and hold them up, that were attached to the board. I also needed 1 2x4 that was 16 feet long to go over the top of those boards, just to add more structure and make sure that they stayed in place and didn't bend over time. I decided to add another 12-foot 2x4 in between the 2 posts where the slats were. This would add more stability and prevent those slats from warping over time. Lastly, I just got a little packet of 1/2 inch by 3 inch sleeve anchors for attaching that back beam to the concrete wall. Now that I had my list, I went to Lowe's, loaded it all up in my truck, brought it back home, and was ready to start cutting.
So I've drawn the outline of the notch that I'm going to be creating for the 2x6, and a 2x6's actual size is 1.5 by 5.5. So after I cut that out, it'll fit in there nicely, and I'll do that across all of them. All right, let's get it.
Because the posts were so thick, I had to use a combination of my circular saw and my hand saw to make the notches. I then did some sanding and used the same potato skin outdoor stain I used on my deck in Harley's doghouse.
All right, I got the boards for the posts painted, looking good. Got them lying flat here, and I used some clamps. There was this one on the outside, it was kind of bowing out a little bit, so I'm just trying to use the clamps to keep them all straight.
The next step was to dig the 3 holes that the posts would go in. I wanted the post to be 9 feet tall, so I dug a 3-foot hole. I made sure to measure exactly how deep each one was to ensure that they would all be the same height and the front horizontal beam would be level. My wife helped hold the posts while I used a nail gun to add some stabilizing pieces after making sure both sides were level. We then proceeded to add the concrete into the 2 holes before proceeding to the 3rd post.
So here we have Mr. Soup TV himself mixing up the concrete like he's gonna bake a cake. And you gotta mix it gently, and you have to talk, you have to whisper sweet nothings to it while you're mixing it.
It took us a few times adding and removing some dirt to ensure that the front horizontal piece was level, But after we got it, we stabilized it and proceeded to shovel in the concrete while Sarah packed it down. I wanted the ends of each piece to have a uniform design, so I created a simple stencil out of a piece of cardboard. After I made that cut and painted them, put them up, I used 2 bolts on each post to attach the beam securely.
All right, got that in. Each one looking a lot better, more straight. Now we gotta figure out the whole piece of wood for the back, measure that, and get it up there.
I pre-drilled some holes into the back beam so it would be easier for me to use the hammer drill once I put it up against the wall. I then had to figure out exactly how high I should put the back beam, so I did a few tests simulating how it would look once I put on a cross beam. I wanted the cross beams to be slightly sloping away from the house, so I positioned the back beam a bit higher than the front. After testing out the beam on the right side, I wanted to test it out on the left side as well, just to make sure it fit there too. To my surprise, it actually didn't fit, which told me that the wall and my front structure weren't perfectly parallel. Now I'd have to make each piece a bit longer, which wasn't a huge deal, but I'm really happy I checked this before cutting them all to the same length. After I had measured to the right height and made sure that it was level, it was time to use the sleeve anchors to secure it to the concrete wall. After I secured the 10 anchors to the back beam, I probably could have done pull-ups from it. My next task was to screw in the Simpson joists to the back beam. I made a small replica of one of them and used that to evenly make the markings on where I would place each one, and then proceeded to screw them in and secure them to the back beam. I then needed to cut out the notches in each cross beam, but because I knew they would not all be exactly the same length, I decided to put them up and just draw out exactly where I would have to make the cuts on each. Once I did that, I noticed that there were a few boards that were really bent, even though I had laid them flat on my garage floor. So make sure to check for this when picking out your pieces. This led to my idea of adding another perpendicular piece on top of them with notches in order to prevent them from bending, but that would come later. After I cut out all the notches with my jigsaw, I painted them with the roller and let them dry out. Then it was time for the best part, putting them up. The boards easily slid into the joists, and then I used a rubber mallet for connecting them to the front beam. After all the work getting the structure in place, it was really rewarding to finally see them go up.
All right, so I have the slats all cut. Each one was 104 inches. Actually, one of the posts bends like this way, so I'm gonna have to cut them a little bit further down, a few of them. No big deal, but it's raining out today, so I'm gonna be painting inside. I've got everything set up, a nice tarp on the bottom so the paint doesn't hit the floor, and yeah, it's gonna go along with the roller. Paint them all. Let's go. All right, you can see that a lot of these boards are pretty curved, so I don't want that, to mess it up. I want there to be like 1 inch exactly in between. Some of them are, curved this way. Some of them are curved up. So what I'm gonna have to do is, I think I'm gonna need to put another 2x4 in the middle of here.
I also attached a 2x1 on the inside of the 2 posts where the privacy slats would be placed. This way they would be flush with the posts and I would have something to nail them into. After I put up the 2x4 in between the 2 posts and secured it to the top beam, it was time to put up the privacy slats. I wanted a 3/4 inch gap in between each slat, so I used some spare boards I had to ensure that length, and then I used my brad nailer to nail them into place. Then I just kept going on down the line until I was happy with the height. Here it is about a year later, still holding up great. I planted those arborvitaes last fall, and the grass has grown in well all around. I also planted a honeysuckle bush that should climb up the slats like a trellis. You can see here the crossbeam I also put on top with notches to ensure the boards did not warp over time. I also painted all the bolts and joists in order to blend them in.
Alright, well that wraps it up for this video. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like, or feel free to comment or ask any questions below. Hopefully this helps you and gives you the confidence to build your own. Peace.